Hey, welcome into the Round Pen with Ruby here. I've had a lot of questions lately about correcting a horse and when is it appropriate to correct a horse or hit a horse or something like that. So I'm going to try to address that. And first of all, let me say that you only correct a horse if they are doing something, a behavior, intentionally. If your horse is scared, like you wave your hand, they jump away from you, that's not something that's you need to correct. That's something you need to teach them not to be afraid of you. So this correction is only for a horse that is doing something, a behavior that needs to be corrected. For example, you're picking up their foot and they're pulling their foot away, or they're trying to avoid you for some reason, something like that would be, or nipping at you. Those would be behaviors that need to be corrected. All right, first, now let me address hitting a horse with a stick, okay? I would say almost never. It should be very rare that you would actually hit a horse to correct it. And the reason I say that is not because you're going to hurt the horse, because you're probably not. I'm going to say that because it doesn't work, okay? It just doesn't. The only time I would do it is if a horse were aggressively coming at me, like attacking me with an open teeth or attacking me with its feet, then I would hit it. And again, that wouldn't necessarily correct it. It would just kind of save my life. So that really doesn't work. You need to figure out a way to make your horse uncomfortable, make the right thing easy and the wrong thing difficult. So that's all of my, precursors to actually showing you how to correct a horse. So I'm going to give you 3 ways here. The first way, and probably the one I use the most, is yield the hindquarters. So, and I've seen this used for horses that are pulling their feet away, or horses that are shouldering into you, or maybe running ahead of you, or something like that. Just come around here, look at those hindquarters and say, move those hindquarters. Come on, get them, move them, move them, move them. And horses don't like this. It's uncomfortable and they just don't like it. Move it around there, okay? And so that's why it works as a correction. I'm asking her to do something she doesn't like doing. So let's say she pulled her foot away from me, I would do that, and then I'd come right back, pick the foot up again. If she pulled her foot away, I'd do that again, okay? And pretty much they can usually figure it out. And I'll show you in a moment how to do that from the saddle. Second way to correct a horse is backing up. Some horses, depending on the horse, some of them hate being backed up. Okay, and in fact, one of my older horses, he tends to want to pull his foot away from you when you're trimming his feet, just because he's just being grumpy, doesn't want to hold him up there. He's not the least bit afraid, he just doesn't want to do it. And so I'll just come in here and say, hey, back up. And I'll back him up depending on, the punishment needs to fit the crime. So depending on how aggressively he pulled his foot away would depend on how aggressively I would back him up. Okay, and then I'd come right back and start over again, pick his foot right back up, that sort of thing. Okay. Third way to correct a horse, and this one I use usually for anything the horse is doing with their head, like turning around trying to nip at me, or maybe they're nipping at another horse or something like that. I'll just take my thumb, put it right between their ribs and poke them. You're never going to hurt a horse back here, okay? So you can poke as hard as you want. You're never going to hurt that horse, but they don't like it. When I was a little kid, I had a Shetland pony that used to bite me every day. He was pretty ornery. And the adults told me, hit that horse in the face. So he'd bite me and I'd smack him upside of his nose. And you know what? He never got any better. It does not work. But what does work usually is this right here. Just give them a big poke right in the ribs. You're not going to hurt them, but they don't like it. And I'm not going to go into all the reasons why I think this works. I just know that for the most part it does. All right. Last thing, let me show you how to yield the hindquarters from the saddle. And I use this for horses that are just being belligerent about something under saddle. I had a horse a few years ago that was, whenever you'd lope him around and he'd get somewhere by the barn, he'd start running sideways trying to go to the barn. So you'd be loping along and he'd start running sideways trying to run to the barn, especially with some of my riding students. So what I did was I got on him, started riding him around, and whenever he committed the sin, started running to the barn, I just bent him around, started kicking him in the belly like this. Okay, and I kicked him and I'd pop him on the reins with like that, and then I gave him a chance. All right, let's try it again. I think it took 2 or 3 times of me correcting the bad behavior, and then the next time I brought him around, he just, yes sir, I'll do what I know I'm supposed to do. Okay, so those are some ways you can use for correcting your horse. And again, this doesn't work if your horse is afraid. Okay, this is a correction for bad behavior. It is not a correction for fear. If your horse is afraid, you need to train it. You need to teach it not to be afraid of you.